Today's chapter, A Face in the Dark by Ruskin Bond. Ruskin Bond is an Indian author of British descent. Descent, that is, descending from British parents. So his parents were Britishers. He is a prolific writer, a very fluent writer, a very loved writer, whose works are popular with adults and children alike. In the following story, writer Ruskin Bond relates a thrilling incident set among the picturesque hills around Shimla. Now, thrilling means exciting. This is an exciting incident and it is set among the picturesque hills of Shimla. Picturesque means scenic hills around Shimla. Ruskin Bond's fascination means interest, with the paranormal finds expression in this macabre tale. So, this story deals with fascination with the paranormal activities. Now, what is paranormal? Paranormal is something which cannot be defined by science or any natural occurrence. Something that is not natural, something that science cannot, something that defies science, like ghosts. So science still does not have any explanation for and it has not been able to prove whether ghosts exist or not. So ghost such stories are paranormal stories because they are not scientifically proven, or science cannot prove what it is. So fascination with the paranormal finds expression in this macabre tale. Macabre means strange and frightening tale. So you have to pick up these words to write the theme of the story. So the theme of the story is how it deals with people's fascinations, humanity's fascination with paranormal activities. We are all interested in paranormal activities. So we are all interested in listening to ghost stories. Mr. Oliver is a school teacher. He is on his back to school, on his way back to school. Late one night, when he meets with a strange young boy, the meeting fills him with terror, and he takes to his heels. He runs, only to discover that there is no escape for him. Ruskin Bond makes skillful use of all elements of a horror story: fear, surprise, suspense, mystery, to explore humanity's collective fascination with the dark. Fascination means interest with the dark. Now, if they ask you the theme, you can write that the story deals with humanity's fascination with the dark. If you can also now they can also ask you, why did the story appeal to you? So there also you can write that the story appeals to me because of the skillful use of all the elements of a horror story: fear, suspense, surprise, mystery. And this story, I like this story because this story explores humanity's collective fascination with the dark. Okay. A Face in the Dark by Ruskin Bond. Mr. Oliver, an Anglo Indian teacher, was returning to his school late one night. You have to prepare questions simultaneously. Don't wait for teachers to ask questions. You can prepare your own set of questions that will help you to prepare better for the examinations, and you will not be shocked by any unprepared questions. So, who was Mr. Oliver? An Anglo Indian teacher. Where was he going? He was returning to his school late one night. Where was the school? Outskirts, outer region of the hill station of Shimla. So we have one more detail over here. Describe the school. So the school was located on the outskirts of the hill station of Shimla. From before Kipling's time means Rudyard Kipling was a very popular writer. If I say that my great grandfather existed during Mahatma Gandhi's time, so that means I am giving you a comparison for you to understand how long ago it was that my grandfather existed. So, similarly, here an example has been given from before Kipling's time. It means how old the school was. The school existed before Kipling's time, before Kipling was alive. The school had been run on English public school lines. Lines means rules and regulations. English public school means the rules and regulations followed in the public schools in England. Now, why are these rules applicable? Why were these rules applicable in India? Because India was under the British rule when this story was written, and many schools, many convent schools were established. So this was one of the boarding schools which was established in Shimla, and because it was established by the Britishers, the rules and regulations that were followed in the school public schools in England were applicable in this school. So the method of education, the Britishers had brought their traditional method of teaching here, and boys, most of them from wealthy Indian families, most of the boys belong to wealthy families. They wore blazers, caps and ties. Describe the students of the school. So the students of the schools were mostly from Indian families, wealthy Indian families, and they wore blazers and caps and ties. Life magazine, a very popular magazine, it in a feature in it had once covered stories from India, so had once called it Eton of the East. Eton is a very popular boarding school in England. Now, Eton of the East, that means this school, which was established in Shimla, has been compared to the Eton of England. Eton, which is a public school in England, and this school has been termed as the Eton of the East. Let's take, for example, if we compare one particular school to St. Xavier's, you can understand that the school is as worthy as St. Xavier's. Okay. So why East? Because the world was divided into two powers, the Eastern world and the Western world. Western world, Europe, Eastern world, Asia. So similarly, Eton of the East. So the school was termed as the Eton of the East. Mr. Oliver had been teaching in the school for several years. Okay. Now, how do we go about preparing the prose? Here, there are several questions, 4 questions which we have prepared. Number 1, describe Mr. Oliver, Anglo-Indian teacher. And number 2, he had been teaching in the school for several years. So these are the 2 details we get about Mr. Oliver. And details about the school. The school was located on the outskirts of the hill station in Shimla. The school existed before Kipling's time. The school had been run on the lines of English public school, and most of the students were wealthy students, and Life magazine had praised the school as compared the school as to the Eton of England. It has termed the school as Eton of the East. Next question, where was Mr. Oliver going? Mr. Oliver was returning to his school. Okay, so you have to prepare such questions so that you know beforehand what questions can be asked. The Simla Bazaar with its cinemas and restaurants. Why was the Simla Bazaar popular? The Simla Bazaar was popular because of its cinemas and restaurants. It was about 3 miles from the school, and Mr. Oliver, a bachelor. One more detail about Mr. Oliver. He usually strolled into the town in the evening. Strolled, that means roamed casually because he did not have any work to do in the evening. So he strolled into the town in the evening, returning after dark when he would take a shortcut through the pine forest. So, what was Mr. Oliver's habit? Mr. Oliver's habit was to stroll into the town in the evening and return after dark, and he took a shortcut through the pine forest. So, here one more detail about Mr. Oliver. Mr. Oliver was a bachelor. So, what are the details we have acquired about Mr. Oliver? Anglo Indian teacher, has been teaching in the school for several years. He was a bachelor and he had a habit of strolling in the Simla Bazaar every evening. When there was a strong wind, the pine trees made sad, airy, ghostly sounds, strange sounds that kept most people to the main road. So why did people avoid the shortcut through the pine forest in the evening? Because when a strong wind blew, the pine trees made sad, airy sounds. But Mr. Oliver was not nervous or imaginative man. Why did Mr. Oliver follow the path despite others avoiding it? Because he was not nervous, he was not afraid, he did not get easily afraid of things. Imaginative, that is, he was not an imaginative man. That means he was a practical man and he did not imagine things that ghosts exist and other such things. So, other details about Mr. Oliver, if we add, he was not a nervous or imaginative man. He carried a torch and its gleam, the batteries were running down. So, here Ruskin Bond starts creating mystery and suspense. The example number 1, the torch, the battery is running down. So that means the torch will flicker and fitfully it'll get lit. So fitful matlab irregular, inconsistently glow kar raha hai, jal raha hai, but raha hai, and flickering also going on and off, going on and off. It means so some suspense is being created. So he carried a torch and its gleam, the batteries were running down, moved fitfully down the narrow forest path. So okay, so when its flickering light fell in the figure of a boy who was sitting alone on a rock, what did he notice suddenly? He noticed a boy sitting alone on a rock. Mr. Oliver stopped. Boys were not supposed to be out after dark. Why was Mr. Oliver angry at the boy? Because boys were not supposed to be out after dark. What are you doing here, boy? Asked Mr. Oliver, sharply moving closer so that he could recognize the miscreant. Who is a miscreant? A boy who breaks the rule. So he has broken the rule. Something, okay. But even as he approached the boy, Mr. Oliver sensed, excuse me, excuse me, that something was wrong. The boy appeared to be crying. So, what did Mr. Oliver notice as he approached the boy, as he got close to the boy? So, he noticed that the boy appeared to be crying, his head hung down, he held his face in his hands, and his body shook convulsively. Convulsively मतलब सिकुड़ रहा है उसका शरीर, सिकुड़ रहा है शरीर के सिकुड़ने को, ट्रेम्बल करने को. सो वो रो रहा है. हिज body was was shaking convulsively. So what does he notice as he approaches the boy? He notices that the boy was crying. He notices that the boy's head was hung down. He held his face in his hands. His body shook convulsively. 4 points. It was a strange, soundless weeping. He was sobbing. He did not make any noise. And Mr. Oliver felt distinctly uneasy. Clearly, he felt very uneasy. Well, what is the matter? He asked, his anger giving way to concern. So why did his anger give way to concern? So उसमें जो boy के साथ notice किया वो लिख देना. That means he noticed that the boy was sobbing, his face was held in his hands, etc. etc. What are you crying for? The boy would not answer or look up. तो ये जो quotations में है ये भी ICSE में पूछता है. What did Mr. Oliver say as he approached the boy? Okay, so प्लीज़ नोट दिस डाउन बिकॉज एग्ज़ाम्स के समय याद आना मुश्किल होता है. पहले से अगर हम लोग आंसर्स बना ले तो ईजी होता है. द बॉय वुड नॉट आंसर नॉर और लुक अप. हाउ डिड द बॉय रिएक्ट? ही नाइदर आंसर्ड नॉर लुकड अप. हिज बॉडी कंटिन्यूड टू बी रैक्ड, टू बी ट्रबल्ड विथ साइलेंट सॉबिंग. सो वो कांपता रहा रोते रोते. कम ऑन बॉय, यू शुडंट बी आउट हियर एट दिस आवर. दिस इज नॉट द टाइम फॉर बॉयज टू बी आउट. टेल मी द ट्रबल. लुक अप. द बॉय लुकड अप. He took his hands from his face and looked up at his teacher. The light from Mr. Oliver's torch fell on the boy's face, if you could call it a face. It had no eyes, no eyes, ears, nose, or mouth. It was just a round, smooth head with a school cap on top of it. And that is where the story should end. But for Mr. Oliver, it did not end there. So what did Mr. Oliver notice as he saw the boy's face? He noticed that the boy did not have any features, eyes, ears, nose, or mouth, and it was just a round, smooth head with a school cap on top of it. So here is another answer. You need to prepare such answers. It will be easy for you if you prepare such answers. So the torch fell from his trembling hand. He turned and scrambled down the path, running blindly through the trees and calling for help. So how did Mr. Oliver run? So the torch fell from his hand. He turned and scrambled down the path. He ran blindly through the trees. बिना देखे इधर उधर भाग रहा है डर के मारे, and called for help, calling for help. He was still running towards the school building when he saw a lantern swinging in the middle of the path. Now, why do watchmen swing the lantern? Because when the lantern is swung, the shadows also swing, and that frightens any wild animal if it is there. So that's why watchmen swing the lantern. So he noticed a watchman swinging a lantern in the middle of the path. Mr. Oliver stumbled up to the watchman. Stumbled, that is losing his balance. गिरते गिरते वो उसके पास आया. So he lost his balance. He stumbled up to the watchman, gasping for breath. तो यहाँ पे दो चीज़ दिखा रहा है कि हाउ रेकलेसली ही रैन. क्या क्या चीज़ है? एक तो वो ब्लाइंडली भागा, Then he stumbles, and then he reached the watchman, gasping for breath. Okay, finding it very difficult to breathe, opening his mouth wide to breathe. What is it, Sahib? Asked the watchman. Has there been an accident? Why are you running? I saw something horrible, a boy weeping in the forest, and he had no face. No face, Sahib? No eyes, nose, mouth, nothing. Did you mean it was like this, Sahib? Asked the watchman, and raised the lamp to his own face. The watchman had no eyes, no ears, no features at all, not even an eyebrow, and that's when the wind blew the lamp out. Okay, and that's when the wind blew the lamp out. So you see that nothing has been mentioned what happened to Mr. Oliver after that. It is for the readers to create to continue with the imagination. Maybe Mr. Oliver fainted and next morning he was found. Okay, so that's up to you how well you can imagine that. So please prepare the questions, that will be of great help. Thank you so much.